All right, if you were on the other video, that one unexpectedly cut out. So I don't know what that was about, but gonna try again. I was talking about having my race card pulled or being afraid of that rather, and talking about what makes somebody black, and really specifically about culture and how we want to adhere to a certain culture, whether as individuals or as a group, as that cultured society. We want to continue keeping ourselves within this culture and acting in a certain way. And one of the things that we do is we tell others that they have to act this certain way or they're no longer a part of our culture, which to an extent does kind of make sense as far as like, yeah, technically they're no longer part of your culture if they don't act in the cultural norms that you've already established. But at the same time, it's as if you're saying that you don't have the right to be an individual. You don't have the right to choose for yourself how you want to be perceived or how you want to interact with life in general. It's as if you only can live in these certain ways, in these certain guidelines. And then that allows for like basically, uh, you know, basically that allows for someone to become really racist. Really, it's like uh, if I say that these are my cultural norms and you're not allowed to participate in them, well, why not? Because you weren't raised in that same way. But then that's also like saying, you know, I was born in America, and so my cultural norms are I've got uh, clean water and food and electricity that runs through my home and everything. And because you weren't born in this way, you don't get to participate in that. That's essentially what we do for a lot of, obviously foreign countries that are underdeveloped. They don't get to participate in our cultural norms just because they're not like us, because they don't speak the same language, we don't understand them, and therefore we deny them the rights that every person should have, right? It's interesting just seeing that here, just in the States, having different cultures, and the different cultures just being like, oh, okay, this one is from some Hispanic or Spanish speaking country. Um, and then these people, they all relate to each other because they're all black. And so they relate to each other for the color of their skin and the areas that they grew up in, and the kinds of media that they participate in or watch, and are all not just aware of, but it's part of who they are. And then you've got, other people who are really elite and they have their own culture. And okay, so this is like where you can really see it with the elite. They have their culture of, I've got money, I keep my kids in, private schools, away from everybody else. And at the same time, they are um, basically keeping everybody else out, and they network with each other, and so they're able to continue building on, you know you know building businesses together and creating the lives that they want, and they keep everyone else out just by participating in their cultural norms. And it's as if instead of saying, like, for somehow we have this dichotomy where we say, well, everyone is human and we should take care of everyone and treat everyone the way we want to be treated. Yet at the same time, this is my culture. Please respect my culture, and I want to keep to my culture and keep this and keep you out of my culture. Um, and if we're really all the same, then the culture should be second to or really irrelevant in the grand scheme of things as far as creating a world that is really working for everybody that inhabits the planet, right? For everyone that inhabits the planet, um, and that means that what we're doing with uh, protecting certain classes is kind of silly too, or protecting like basically making excuses for why someone can't achieve the same level of success or education or anything because they have a different culture. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, they have a different culture, so they should stop that culture and everyone should just participate in the same culture if we want everyone to get the same results. Or it shouldn't be deemed as um, you're hating on somebody because of their culture. It's like, well, that culture actually promotes or doesn't allow for a lot of growth. And this could be, any culture in general that's not already the elite culture. Like, the elite culture is is working for them, but it doesn't work for everyone else. So then everyone else should adopt what actually works, right? As opposed to what we do right now in general is like we hold on to this feeling of, but this is my culture, I must protect it and keep it going forever and ever and ever. But the only reason that we feel that way is because we were raised that way, and we have a lot of emotional feelings and attachments that go with those traditions or cultural norms that we're used to. Like, that's something to really investigate, is that the reason that we do the things that we do, or the reasons why we want to defend so so strongly everything that we're used to, is because it's familiar and because we have strong associations, emotional associations, and good feeling associations with those things, and we don't want to see those things go away. And we make this story of, that's my history, it's a part of who I am and what I must do, but that's not really a good reason or even an excuse for keeping things the way that they are. In fact, one could argue, like, slavery is a part of this country's history, but obviously it's not best for anyone at all, and that needs to be, or needed to be, done away with, right? But in the same token, there are things that we do as a people, like, for instance, just the idea that money is, okay, for instance, like, when you're a kid, or at least when I was a kid, I had questions about, why are there poor people? Why are there poor people? Why, you know, do some people not have a lot of money or food, or like, and I was looking at it from the context of, religiously, like, why would God let that happen? Right. And the answers that I always was given and I can remember are, that's just the way that the world is, or that's just God's plan. Which to me is like a a defense of, you know, this is how I know to do things, and we're just going to continue doing things this way. I don't really want to change, even though, you look at the reality of things. And the reality is that we as human beings have created money. We give it its value, and so then if we are the ones who are giving it its value, then why should the money control us? It shouldn't be controlling us. We should be controlling it and what we do with it and how we use it to actually help people. Um, and yet, that's not what we're doing. If you look at what's going on today with the pandemic, even you see that supply chains are breaking down and food is being thrown away, and it's creating these artificial shortages of food, which is like really silly and stupid to know that there's food out there. There's the same amount of people on the planet, and yet we're just throwing away food that would usually get consumed and used. We're throwing it out because it just doesn't fit in this supply chain, because that's supposed to go to a hotel or a restaurant. It's like, okay, but people still eat. Like the same amount of people that were going to those hotels and restaurants, they're still going to the grocery store at least and getting food. Like, why wouldn't that food then go to the grocery stores? Like, it doesn't really make sense. And it's just because we're kind of set in our ways. And so bringing this back down to the individual level, I also wanted to talk about, do we really value education? If we're looking at, the way that we've been educated, I would say most people do not actually value education, even the ones that think they do, because if you look at the education that you got, for the most part, the education that you got, like, you remember, like, I for myself, I can speak for myself. I remember going to school and feeling like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the purpose of this? Like, why do I have to keep coming here every day? Like, just to learn some stupid stuff. Like, I could see for myself anyway that a lot of the things that I was learning had no relevance to my life. And I think, that that's kind of this sentiment. I know a lot of my friends, when I would talk to them, they would feel very similarly. And I think that most people, or at least a lot of people, can see that as well, that there is no real relevance there, but yet we continue doing that and we put our kids through that as well. And so we don't actually value real education, because we know that that had no real value. That education that we got anyway had no real value for us. And so, what do I mean by real education? I mean, it would look completely different than what we have available to us at the moment. It would essentially look like, a real education would be really changing society, really producing a society that actually takes care of everyone in the society. But to produce a society that's like if you had a family where, there's a father and a mother and kids, let's say 3 kids, right? You wouldn't just say, like, the father wouldn't just say, okay, you know what, I'm taken care of, so as long as the kids are, like, they have at least, you know a meal a day, with just one meal a day, and maybe the wife, she gets 2 meals, but I get all the meals that I want, I'm taken care of. And so, I'll just manage you guys so that you know I'm fine, and I'll be okay. We wouldn't do that even if, like, you expanded that family. You'd say, okay, there's this father and mother and their kids, and then dad's brother or mom's brother or mom's sister or dad's sister, and, like, okay, they're all together, let's say, living in the same neighborhood, right? It would be really weird if one of those families said to their brothers and sisters, okay, you guys just all take care of us now. We're better than you. God ordained it, and so we're better than you. And you guys are just going to work and do all the work and do everything, and we're going to live off of your work, and you're going to actually get less because you're working, and less enjoyment out of life as well. And but God ordained that we should have a better life than you, and we're taking care of you. So we'll tell you what to do. You listen to us, and everything will be great. We wouldn't. That would seem really weird for somebody to do that to their own family, right? But that's essentially what we're doing in our society. It's like we look at each other as if we're not related, or we're not all in this together, or that we could do without one another, or it's really, it doesn't make sense logically. And the justification that we use is because we have different cultures. And really, in reality, what that's saying is we don't understand one another. We're reading from different books. We have different ideas that not everyone has the same base or same foundation to be able to understand one another. So that means that, oh, I'm looking at you and going, um, we're not speaking the same language, like maybe literally, or maybe like you just don't get anything that I'm saying, and that becomes a problem, right? And so we're using this just even within our own country, let alone the rest of the world, but even within our own country, where we can't understand each other as individuals because we don't all have the same foundation or the same understanding of one another. And instead of saying, well, why don't we just create a new culture where we're all involved, what we've been doing instead is holding fast to our preferences already, or our cultures already, and saying you just have to accept my culture and my history, and that creates more division between us. Like, don't get me wrong, we should be celebrating our diversity in some sense, which I think can be celebrated very easily, as far as like we as individuals are all different from each other already. We're not all exactly the same. And that would be really celebrating diversity, right? But to have to basically adhere to this idea of we do things in this certain way, and this is what makes us who we are, that's not reality. That's not true. Like, just because your grandparents blew tobacco in their noses, and then your parents blew tobacco in their noses, and now you blow tobacco in your own nose, or you get tobacco blown in your nose, that doesn't make you who you are. That's not really like, if you stopped having the tobacco blown in your nose, and I'm using that as an example because that is something that actually happens. That is part of a ceremony that actually takes place in South America. But that doesn't make you who you are just because you participated in this ceremony, and you've seen your parents participate in this ceremony and their parents participate in this ceremony. Like, that's fine. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, in the grand context, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make sense to hold on to that while also making excuses for why you can't do other things, or why we can't come together. because I guess in this context or in this example, it would be because you don't respect me blowing tobacco in my nose, or you don't also blow tobacco, or you're not allowed to blow tobacco in your nose because you don't understand, what it took, for my people to get this. Um, it's like we use it to make ourselves feel special. That's what it is. We're using all of this stuff, all of these cultural differences to make ourselves feel special and individual when we don't have to. We're already individuals. We're already different from one another. And yet we have these similarities that we all need: food, water, shelter, like the necessities of each one of us. We need attention as children and infants, right? All these necessities that we have are the same no matter where you go in the world. Every individual, like, you can you can say that, um, maybe some people uh, like chocolate and other people don't like chocolate. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you know that every single person needs clean water. That's not debatable. Every single person needs food, good, nutritious food, in order to eat and minimize malnutrition and the diseases that could come from that. And everyone needs education in order to uh, be able to, even if you're just going to farm your own land, you need a certain amount of education if you're going to survive in this world. And then, especially to communicate with others. And I don't mean education in the sense of like, you got to know about history. That's really irrelevant, but more so that you can communicate and understand what someone else is saying. That's a real education, to really be able to comprehend and speak on the same level. And anything else, that's not providing for these basic needs of, again, food, water, shelter, education, um, clothes on your back, and a few other things. Everything else that's just like keeping a tradition alive is irrelevant. And we're using this as a point for ourselves to keep ourselves enslaved. And by enslaved, I mean enslaved to our own memories, enslaved to our own feelings, enslaved to our own emotions. Because we want to feel this certain way, we don't allow for anything new to take place or anything new to be introduced, because that threatens our memories of our past and threatens our feelings and emotions. And then we have to change, and we have to change those feelings. And then we have to let go of how we perceive ourselves, because we've identified ourselves as those traditions or cultures, when in reality, you are not those things, or I am not those things. I am not what I am told Black people do. I am not what I am told Dominicans do. I'm not those things. I am me. I'm an individual. And you are also an individual. And so, shouldn't we be doing what's best for the individuals, all of the individuals, not just one individual, but all of the individuals? Shouldn't we do what's best for all of us collectively and let go of anything that prevents us from coming together and really taking care of one another, and let go of anything that divides us or that we keep as a way to make ourselves unique? And therefore, if we're unique or we're special, we almost think of ourselves as superior, or No, I'm special. I'm special, so I get this special treatment, and then that means that you can't get that special treatment. Somebody else can't get that special treatment, rather. That's what special is, isn't it? It's a way to it's a way to stop, not share, or to justify why you get a certain treatment or you deserve something specific and others don't. Because if you use the flip argument that no, everyone's special, which, as I'm saying, everyone is an individual, then that means that everyone deserves everyone deserves well, everyone deserves everything. Everyone deserves what they need. And I agree with that. I believe that. I know that everyone deserves what they need, but we don't treat everyone that way. We're not treating everyone as if everyone is special. We're treating ourselves as if we are the special ones. We are the unique ones. And then there's everyone else. Consider that. Usually, most of the time when we say, I'm special or I'm unique, we're also implying that everyone else is not special or unique. And so the specialness or uniqueness, when you're saying that everyone is special, then you realize that, okay, everyone's special. That means that no one is really um, specialer or really unique, because every individual has a unique quality to them. So it's almost irrelevant to say that you're special or unique. And so tying this back into, are you a slave to your culture? Well, if you are just going along with what you've been told as far as how you're supposed to act or how your people act, and yours in air quotes, right? Then you're not actually being individual. You're just a follower. And that's the problem with culture in general, is you get swept up in it and you just become a follower instead of leading yourself. To be a leader doesn't mean you have to lead other people. You just have to lead yourself, which means that if you're swept up in a culture, regardless of whose culture it is, but you adhere to all the rules of that culture, and the rules of that culture aren't first and foremost doing what is best for all life on this planet and treating others as you would actually want to be treated and respected, then you are a slave to your culture, because you're just going along with an ideology or traditions or actions, thoughts, beliefs that at the end of the day abuse life. And so if you can hear what I'm saying and it makes sense, but you're not sure how to break free of the culture, because rebelling against the culture is still, you're just still participating in it, really, or you're fighting against it, but you're still putting your focus on it. It's not really actually being an individual. It's just the opposite polarity of the same thing. It's the obverse side of the same coin. You're just pushing against something that is, you're still doing the same thing. You're creating the same thing at the end of the day. I'm not saying we should ban all cultures and all cultures are bad. But there is a point of actually stopping, breathing, considering what would be best for yourself and for those around you. And for a lot of people, that's actually hard to consider because they can't even venture outside of the thinking of their own culture. And so just fighting it is not the answer. It's actually because you're still inside of it. You actually have to understand the culture, understand your participation in it, and understand how that relates to what's going on with life in general and the rest of the world, and actually make decisions for yourself as an individual to do what's best for yourself and do what's best for the world and the future and for your future children. And I think a lot of people don't realize the wake that they leave in just continuing their lives the way that they are. Sometimes people will say, well, my life's better now, but they haven't really changed anything. They haven't really changed the system itself. And so what that means is then they create a wake behind them of, well, somebody else is going to experience the exact same things that you experienced in the past that you didn't like. And so if you can hear what I'm saying, it makes sense to you, please leave a comment and reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you and go further with this. But just allowing for ourselves as people to perpetuate what we're doing, it's unacceptable.